All right, the audio sounds good. The visuals are good. We are going to get rocking and rolling. Are your audios good, Trev?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
All
right, check 1 2 1 2. What it do? The name is Matthew Freena. They also call me Matty Ice, and this is the Eat the Fruit podcast.
The Eat the Fruit podcast, where we review fruits and things of that nature, but not really. So, welcome.
We are never afraid to give our opinions, though. Even though we don't necessarily review specific fruits like bananas and apples, we are never bashful when it comes to expressing ourselves. And really, that's what this podcast has all been about. We've kind of gone back and forth these last few months trying to decide what the exact theme of Eat the Fruit is, but things have just kind of slowly morphed and developed into its own little kind of beautiful cosmos. These last few weeks and these last few months, and now it's just kind of turned into this platform where we can share ideas with one another and also share a little bit of our stories. And speaking of our stories, Trev has made a pretty important decision in his life the last few weeks, and it's pertinent to what we're doing here at Eating the Fruit. And so, Trev, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what's been going on in your life these last few months?
So, when I moved up here to Jacksonville from Gainesville, I didn't exactly have a solid plan for the year. I just figured I was going to work, I was going to save up money, and eventually either go to UNF or, apply at some online school.
All while making some dope podcasts with Eat the Fruit.
The podcast would be great. I think we were thinking about this before I moved up here, so it's funny how that goes. But yeah. So I just really wanted to move in with Matt and Dan and just have a complete bro out, just have a good time. And we have had a great time. But after some thought and talking with a few people that are important to me in my life, I've made the decision to join the military. I enlist in the Army, I enlisted like 2 weeks ago, and I ship out at the beginning of January. So right now it's December, 14th or 13th or something.
It is Wednesday, December 13th.
The 13th, yeah.
For the record.
So in less than a month, in about 3 weeks, I'm going to be shipping out to South Carolina and then to Texas to complete basic training and combat medic school. And it's a 4-year contract, so other than the month I have off every year, I'm going to be, just who knows wherever the Army needs me. So that's obviously I can't do that and do the podcast at the same time. Who knows what I'll be able to do once I'm in the military. I'll be able to figure it out once I get there if I'm going to have any creative projects or anything. I was kind of talking to Taylor Shrum about that. But yeah, we'll see. So that's kind of where my direction is right now. It's a big adventure. It's a big mystery.
Well, and based off of some of the conversations that Trevor and I have had these last few weeks as some of this different stuff with the military has been finalized, this certainly hasn't seemed like a woe is me type decision. If anything, it has really been just kind of like, Trevor, you just taking advantage of opportunity. I think that's the one thing that I have begun to realize as I've watched Trevor walk through this whole process is how much opportunity there is for individuals that pursue a career in the military. I know you said you're not going into infantry. What's the specific name for the position that you'll be trained in?
It's combat medic. I think it's also called healthcare specialist. But pretty much what that is you're trained in like emergency medicine, field medicine, so you have your basic training, which is 9 weeks, and then you have whatever school you go to after that to train for your specific job. So this is about 4 months of healthcare training, where you're then sent out to a variety of units. So it could be an infantry unit, it could be like a military police unit, an artillery unit, scout, cavalry, anything like that, where there's like, combat focus, I guess. And then you would be like the go-to medical guy on that team. So it like whatever job you have, like whatever your daily tasks are, it just depends on where you're stationed. But yeah, it's funny. My brother, when he was enlisted back in, I think it was like, I don't know, it was during the Iraq War, so whenever that was, he was a combat medic as well. And my dad was also in the military. So like Matt said, this isn't like a end of the line type decision for me. it's more just like I've seen, the benefits that it's had for my brother and my dad and even my grandpa he was in. And it's just something that I want to take advantage of, the whole college aspect, they take care of that. They pay for college.
Which is huge, and that's
Huge.
something we addressed in one of our earlier episodes when we kind of talked about the higher education system. And for people that currently don't necessarily have the funds to be able to support themselves while they're in school or even just pay for school, the GI Bill that the military has implemented can be really, really effective as well. And so, once again, you said initially it's a 4-year agreement that's been arranged between you and the military, and then once you serve those 4 years, there is potential for free schooling unless you decide to sign an even longer contract. And so, as I said before, there's a ton of opportunity when it comes to the military, not just professionally, but with higher academia as well. And so this is really just a very exciting time for Trev, and then also just for his family with the kind of history that you guys have with the military. Trev, besides some of the things that we've already addressed with regards to kind of like the logistical side of the military and some of the different things that you're going to have going on, how are you kind of feeling emotionally about everything? 4 years is a pretty big commitment. Obviously there's going to be boot camp, which will be really intense, and then you're going to be out in the field for a period of time. So what's been your thought process with regards to all that?
Well, it's been it's been interesting because the first thing that you are feeling or thinking when you decide to join the military is definitely more of the kind of what you said, the logistical side, like the logic of why, you're doing this. It's like, okay, I'm getting money. Okay, I get the opportunity to travel. I get to meet a variety of people. There's this structure which I can learn from. I can gain discipline, self-discipline. All that stuff is great. And it's all true. But when you get closer to the ship out, like I'm having to sell some stuff now. I just I adopted out my dog, which I had, which I wasn't going to be able to keep him. So as I get closer and closer to the ship out date, the kind of reality starts setting in, the emotions start changing. And I'm obviously very excited, as I feel like most people would be in this situation to experience something new. There's also the sense that I'm kind of stepping out into the dark. I don't know exactly what's going to be there. I've heard some things, you read about other people's experiences. You can talk to veterans. But how it will affect you is going to be, between you and, whatever's going on, So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the challenge. That's one thing that me and my dad had talked about. He's been reading this book called Iron John, and while he hasn't gone into a lot of detail about it, he says a lot of the book is about like the challenges that men used to go through, or boys used to go through to become men. And now in today's society, outside of the military, there's not really a big tradition for that, and there's not really a big place for, boys to become men, like, to go through like a trial of
kind
sorts.
of like an initiation almost.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've always, I love working out. I love challenges. I used to do CrossFit and stuff like that. And even when I work out now, I look at the workout as, like, am I able to do this? Like, do I have what it takes to complete this workout? And, basic training and the schooling, I assume, in the Army is going to be a huge challenge, a huge hurdle. And I'm very, looking forward to kind of, just taking that on and seeing if I have what it takes. Well,
and it sounds like it can be a huge confidence booster as well. And I think that's really essential to who we are as men. Sorry, ladies, this is going to be a little bit of a guy talk for a minute.
Bro sesh.
A little bro sesh, even though we do that so much already. But I think this just applies to people in general. So it's not just specifically for men, even though we might see this just kind of emphasized a little bit more, where we really feel the need to challenge ourselves and really ask ourselves, okay, do I have what it takes? And to be able to answer that question honestly, it's like we have to face a challenge. Whether it's professionally with the different careers that we pursue, whether it's relationally, a man making a commitment to a woman to become married. That can certainly be a big challenge. Or even seeing similar long-term relationships with our family members. Oftentimes there can be certain tensions that surface within our relationships with our parents or our siblings, and to be able to say, you know what, this is hard, this is challenging, but I really want to stick with this. I want to stick with this relationship and work through whatever tension we're experiencing at the moment. That can just be really foundational to who we are as people, but to also who we are as men. And it sounds like you're experiencing a little bit of a similar narrative with regards to this most recent career decision. And I think if there's one thing that you guys have been able to see about Trev and Dan and I, Dan unfortunately couldn't be here this morning. He's catching up on all the sleep that he didn't get this past semester being in nursing school over at UNF. So we're giving him a chance to get some R&R. But for Dan and for Trevor and for myself, we're very much free spirits, and we're very much pioneers, and to be able to have a platform like the military, to really let that free spirit shine and blossom, I think is going to serve you really, really well. And Eat the Fruit, this podcast, I think has been somewhat of a similar platform, with Trev leaving for the military and Dan and I starting up some new things in the spring. I think it's safe to say that this will be our last Eat the Fruit episode, at least for right now. And once again, this platform, just being able to express ourselves and share a little bit of our story and our free spirit, I think has been so phenomenal. But we certainly do not want to leave things on a low note. We're going to be leaving things on a high note, and that's why our guest speaker, or really our call-in guest, is so special for this morning. His name is Tony, and he is the co-founder of Tess, which is an app that he's going to tell us a little bit more about. And I don't want to get too far into things, but Tony is going to be calling in the next few minutes, and so I just kind of want to set the stage for this interview and for our conversation, because Tess is something that's really, really special. And like I said, it's an app. It is an electronic kind of like podcasting platform, and like I said, Tony is going to tell us more about it when he calls in, but just as kind of like a brief summary, with Tess you can essentially not just listen to podcasts, but you can create your own podcasts all on your smartphone device, and even though that sounds a little bit simplistic, it is actually extremely sophisticated, and so pumped up for this phone call. But one of the reasons why I wanted to have Tony on this final episode for Eat the Fruit is because I have already begun recording my own podcasts on the Test platform. I've started a whole new series called the Ice Bites Podcast, and even Trev has talked about maybe starting his own podcast to kind of document his adventures with the military post boot camp. So do you think you're going to follow through with that, Trev, and record some podcasts on Tess once you make it through boot camp? Yeah.
I mean, all depending on, how available I am, but I like this platform, so I plan on continuing.
Well, and once again, when it comes to stuff like the military, I guess freedom of expression isn't as prevalent, maybe, just because there can be certain restrictions or certain protocol when it comes to classified information, and so Trev is certainly going to have to be respectful of that. But once again, Tess is just this really, really amazing platform that we're going to explore in depth this morning, and that Tony is going to tell us a lot about. But really, I became familiar with Tess. We became familiar with Tess through our good friend Taylor Schrum. Ingram, who was our first call-in guest on Eat the Fruit. He was in that pilot episode. We had a ton of fun chatting with him, but he is a part of the test team and is really kind of helping with the business side of the app and the business development and kind of just like exposure and PR. But Taylor was the one who showed me this app and showed us the app and said, "Hey guys, I got acquainted with these dudes. They've developed this app that has a ton of potential. Would you like to try it out? Would you like to test it?" And so, like I said, I started a little mini series on there called Ice Bites, the Ice Bites podcast, and it's just been so fun. The app is so user friendly, so easy to use, and really just once again provides this platform for self-expression, provides this platform to human beings to tell their story, and that's kind of the whole idea behind Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, these different social media platforms, and user-generated content is what has allowed these apps to explode, and that's the whole idea behind Tess. It's just doing it with audio instead of visuals. Instagram is pictures and videos. Facebook is a lot of pictures and videos, and then Twitter is a little more written language. But like I said, Tony should be calling in just the next few minutes. Okay, here he is.
Okay.
Tony, you there, buddy?
Hey?
Hey, Tony, you there?
Yeah, hey Matt, how are you?
Hey, what's up, man?
Everything's good, how about you?
Pretty good. Just another day in paradise. My co-hosts and I, Trevor Baldwin, are here right now at the studio in Jacksonville. Just totally stoked, dude, to hear more about Tess.
Thanks so much for having me on. Hi, Trevor, how are you doing?
Good, man. Welcome to the Eat the Fruit podcast.
Thank you so much. So what should I talk about?
Well, I know last week when we were chatting, you talked a little bit just kind of the inspiration behind Tess, and so just for Trevor, who wasn't there for that conversation, and for all of our listeners and all of our viewers, could you just tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind Tess and how it came to be?
Yeah, so the week after my 20th birthday, which around July 17th, Nick and I, my other co-founder, wanted to create a podcast on some of our favorite TV shows, kind of like and conspiracy theories, kind of like nerdish things like that. And we were really down to do like a podcast and everything. And then we Googled how exactly to, make a podcast, put it out there. And it's like the first 5 guys told us that we had to have a microphone, have audio editing software, have some sort of hosting platform that we also had to pay for. There's just many barriers to entry for something like that I thought was something pretty simple to make. And so Nick and I brainstormed a little bit and kind of had this idea of, well, why don't we make this kind of like this platform where we kind of like let everybody become a creator and just make it as simple from your phone. Because the whole idea was I should just be able to record from my phone and upload that. So that was the main inspiration, kind of like the driving force. That was the whole story of how, and then we just started going at it. One session was like, kind of like road mapping it. Like, can we do this? How can we do this? As far as like the technical side of things, and from then on, it was just development, rapid development.
Cool. Are you guys do you know coding and stuff like that, or did you have to like go to friends that know how to do that, or how did that process where it like came from the idea of it to where it's at right now? I think you have a beta out. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we have a beta, and basically we're both coders. We're both developers. Nice. Nick and I, we're both studying computer science, and just from Nick didn't know much of the framework that we're using now called React Native. I had some experience in it, but ultimately he's like mastered it. He's so good at React Native now. So as far as like the specific framework that we're using now, we didn't have much experience with with that stack. So
well,
we
and
both kind of.
That's so cool.
And Tony, also too, if I may add something, and I've told you this multiple times. I've told Trevor this, and I've also told Taylor this. Tess is really, really special, and you alluded to this in kind of your story when you were talking about the inspiration behind Tess, and I really want to emphasize this as well, which is kind of like the reasoning behind what makes Tess special. Because as you said, you had this idea for creating this podcast, you and Nick, but you didn't necessarily have the technological expertise to really be able to create quality audio content. And so it was like there was this dilemma that you faced, and it's really a dilemma that all creators face, at least to some extent. It's something that Trevor and Dan and I have really had to battle with these last few months as we've started this Eat the Fruit podcast, is really kind of having the production skill to be able to once again produce quality audio content, and so for you to be able to create this app, aka Tess, that allows people with limited technological experience to create quality on audio content, something that sounds and looks professional. I mean, that's crucial. And once again, I think that's why it's so comparable to different platforms like Instagram and like Facebook and like Twitter. So can you kind of talk about that with me a little bit more? Was that something that you were thinking about specifically, not just creating this platform where people can produce content, but where they can kind of do so in a really, really professional way?
So as far as the making the whole platform and everything, we just wanted something to where ultimately we can record. We'd want something that we'd be able to use, and that was super easy. And so kind of like, because we kind of looked for it, like we spent like maybe 3-4 days, just scouring the web for some sort of product that might have been similar to us, and it was weird not finding it. It seemed like such a simple solution. But as far as the overall goal at the moment, right? So since we did have kind of this goal where we never really wanted, we weren't really looking to solve anything or be profit driven or start a startup or anything like that. It was more, we wanted to get kind of our content out there for free, and we wanted to see if this was viable. And so after that, kind of like the evolution of the mission is, so many people supported us, and so many people like really liked what we were about and our mission. They were like, we could be the people that we can be the people that put out this platform. And as of right now, our priority is just to make something that each one of our beta testers love. And so, as far as the priority of what it is now, we have a beta with our very minimum viable product. So something that just works. Now we just need people to love it. And so that's our main priority right now.
Well, and Tony, what's been the response from some of the different users who have downloaded the test beta and have been using it to create content? Because obviously I can sit here and go on all day long about how much I love it, but what's been some of the feedback that you've gotten from some of the other users?
Yeah, so I actually conducted a couple user interviews yesterday, and it's funny because having our conversation that we had maybe a week and a half ago, comparing that, and that's, I would consider you as from a creator standpoint, your view on test. But yesterday I had interviews with users, possible users that are more likely to be listeners and creators. So their problem, and we're talking about users that have had 3 days with the app, and so 3 days with the app and less than 10 sessions on them. And so I specifically wanted to target those users because, in theory, they opened the app and they left it because they didn't find anything interesting. And so, that kind of feedback from users, from a listener standpoint, a lot of them gave me the feedback was, well, I didn't have any of my podcasts that I liked on there. So there wasn't really any, reason for me to be on there, which raises a really good point, right? Because it's true, right? Like, kind of this whole new idea of, democratizing audio. It can't just be something that, we put out there without having some sort of familiarity with the users. So in order to have that familiarity, Nick and I are actually going to be putting on, like top 10 podcasts on iTunes. I'm going to be working on that this week. So that I hope will, kind of bring that familiarity back to those people who had less than 10 sessions on the app, so they can listen to their favorite podcasts that they would usually listen to on different platforms, and then maybe other ones.
And Tony, that seems to be one of the major questions that you and your team have had to answer as you've been creating tests, is how do we make audio interesting? Because that's a question that we all face as creators, whether it's with audio, whether it's with photography, whether it's with written language. How do we make our product, how do we make our content appealing to a wide audience? How do we keep people engaged? And so as you, Tony, and your team have been trying to answer this question, what makes audio interesting, have you guys had any realizations these last couple of weeks that you'd like to share that you think have been really profound, or are you still trying to answer that question?
So I think with our whole mission of kind of innovating the way that we share, create, and listen to audio, that mission is never going to be completely fulfilled. We're always going to be closer to fulfilling the mission, but as far as actually fulfilling it, we have a long way to go. But as some features that I think are going to bring a lot of value to that mission is, putting on the content that users will be familiar with. And we're talking like Masters of Scale, Tim Ferriss show, Joe Rogan, like those kind of like top level podcasts that people would like automatically be familiar with.
Eat the fruit.
Eat the fruit. I hope you're recording this on test, by the way. I know that you're in the studio and probably getting a file out of it, but I was actually wondering, like, maybe you would have the phone like around there just recording it simultaneously.
Tony, that's a great idea, and I should have, but we'll have to save that one for next time, because there are just even great acoustics in this studio, and so even just having the phone recording, we'd get some great audio either way. But it sounds like you guys are already trying to land some big names on tests. I know you mentioned Joe Rogan. We're a huge fan of the Joe Rogan Experience, his podcast. At any point, do you think you'll incorporate a visual component into tests and have videos as well, or do you think it'll stay strictly with audio?
I think solving the problem of how can we make audio interesting is a huge problem, and that's something that I wouldn't want to put too many things on tests. Strictly audio and innovating audio, that can be our niche, and that's something that's how I feel like we can make us successful. Going back to that earlier question of features that we might be wanting to add, kind of like two things that we prioritized yesterday. Shareability of audio of long format content creation, or content, if that makes sense. So imagine if you could highlight minutes 5 through 8, and you wanted to create like this little segment of, this 50-minute audio podcast, and you wanted to highlight those minutes 5 through 8 because, they had some amazing gold on guerrilla marketing. They were talking about it, and it was absolutely amazing. And you wanted to share that on all your socials. That's something that's never been done. I don't know if you kind of like understood the idea. Does that make sense? Kind of like highlighting certain parts of episodes, almost like a bookmark with an endpoint that you can share. So you'd be able to share parts of podcasts, essentially.
Which is genius, because a lot of users these days do not have a long attention span. And so if you're trying to expose them to certain content, you can't often give them like the full hour or the full 2 hour. I mean, even Joe Rogan's podcasts are 3 hours long. But if you take little segments and then you make those shareable, that becomes a lot more digestible for general audiences. And so I totally am tracking with what you're saying, Tony, and I think it's an absolutely fabulous idea.
Yeah, and then another priority is the innovation of audio. So staying true to our roots of what the vision was in the initial. And that's how I texted you the other day to ask if your parents were fitness trainers, because I think that audio and fitness haven't been linked together in the way that they should, because I feel like audio is a better format than video. for fitness influences, right? I feel like I can work out better to a guided workout on audio rather than having to watch a video while I'm working out. It seems almost illogical, but yet it's a whole unexplored space. Guided meditation, all that stuff. Headspace is doing amazing things with guided audio. If we democratize that, and I know millions of people that can do really good pieces of guided meditation, and if I could put them on test, they can offer it free to the world instead of having to pay for something. And so it's just kind of like making audio interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of like rethinking and thinking out of the box. And so that's something that we even thought about, like even the word podcasting, right? How does that put people in a box already? We say the word podcasting, we're a podcasting platform. Test the podcasting platform. People already think, oh, okay, it's strictly long format audio, interviews, like the basic podcasting style, right? Because it's already been defined.
Well, and that's the thing, Tony. We never want creativity limited. And sometimes when you start slapping these titles on people or things, that ability to engage in moments of self-expression kind of fall away or die off, and that's certainly not what we want. And it sounds like that's not what you want with Tess. In fact, you're doing the complete opposite, which is just so amazing. And for any of our listeners that haven't already kind of figured out what Tess is, because sometimes it's easy for things to be convoluted when people are this passionate about their work. But I just want to read the app description, Tony, real quick. This is off an email that I received from the Tess team when they were advertising their beta version, which is out. But here's the app description. It says, Tess is a social platform that innovates the way we share, create, and listen to audio. Users are able to record high-quality audio content straight from their phone with one click and upload to a community of listeners and creators who are pushing the boundaries of what we can do with audio. And so that description of the app kind of highlights this very simple process that users have to engage in order to be able to create quality audio content. And it's really as simple as 1, 2, 3. 1, you're opening the app, 2, you're recording, and then 3, you're uploading your completed podcast to the Tess library. And so for any of you guys, any of our listeners, any of our viewers that haven't caught that already, that's what makes Tess special, is not just the fact that it's making audio interesting, but it's doing it in such a simple way. And Tony and his team are really on the forefront of this work. And Tony, I don't mean to cut you off, but that is all the time that we have for this morning. But once again, we want to thank you so much for calling in, for telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and for all of our listeners and viewers, how can they find you, dude? How can they download Tess on their phones and start using it?
Yeah, so the easiest way is going on discovertest.com. That's TESS, not test. Discovertest.com. There's a link to sign up for the beta, and basically you fill out the Google form. I'll send you a general email and then an invitation link, and you'll have Tess running on your phone. So we're working on, we have the iOS done, and we're working on the Android right now. So we should have Android done by the end of the year, but everybody who's on iOS can get it today, tonight, whenever you want. And we're on all social media channels at Discover Tess, and that's it.
Well, that's perfect. We'll be sure to put that link to discovertest.com in the description. That way, anyone that is watching this video has access to it. I even have a test pulled up on my phone right now. There you see it. So definitely make sure you check out discovertest.com, because what Tony and his team are doing is really, really special. But Tony, we're going to go ahead and let you go, my friend. Once again, thank you so much for calling in, and we hope that all of our listeners and viewers check out what you're doing with Tess, because it is just an amazing platform.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, Trevor, and have a good night, guys.
All right, peace, dude.
All right,
take it
thanks,
easy.
Man.
Take care. Bye.
Well, there you have it, folks, straight from the horse's mouth. We had Tony, the co-founder of the Tess app, calling in and telling us a little bit more about what he and his team are doing with Tess. Like he mentioned on the interview, discoveredtess.com is going to be the best way to download that app onto your cellular device. I have the iPhone 8. It works perfect. I'm sure even though if you have an earlier model of the iPhone or of an Android phone, it'll still work great. Super simple, super user friendly, and honestly the perfect way to start recording your own podcast. So if you've been watching Eat the Fruit and have been loving what we're doing and you'd like to do the same, then Tess is one of the best ways to get started, because as Tony said and as I've said, it is just crazy easy to use. But Trev, honestly, from an outsider looking in, I know you haven't interacted with Tony a whole lot and you haven't even really used the Tess platform. What were your kind of initial impressions?
What it really reminded me of was actually from a podcast I was listening to.
How about that?
What about it? And it was an interview with this guy Dan Carlin, who also has a very popular podcast called Hardcore History, and he was talking about how in I think it was like the earlier mid 90s, him and a group of entrepreneurs, business partners had gotten together and had this idea for something that was very similar to YouTube. Really? As it is now, because back then, to get media and to get news and stuff like that, it was all through professional channels. CNN, Fox had to be on the TV, stuff like that. Like these big companies were creating content, or just TV channels for entertainment.
The major broadcasting networks and cable television.
Exactly. And he was saying, him and his business partners, whatever, believed that the next wave of like entertainment was going to be user generated. And back then, the investors scoffed at him like, no, that'll never happen. People will always want the best, the most professional.
The user's too amateur.
Yeah.
They're just too amateur, too lame. They don't have the skill, the creativity, the expertise. Honestly, it's bullshit. I'm saying it now, and honestly, the market today proves it.
Yeah, for sure. And it just reminded me of like that idea, but in podcast form, because Tony is right. When we initially had started this podcast, we had gotten like our own USB condenser mics, and then we like tried to record it on one computer. We couldn't do that. We did it 2 computers, had to like overlay the audio, all this stuff, and it's a big pain in the neck if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't have like a high level of technical expertise when it comes to this stuff. Because even now, we're in a studio. We have an audio engineer here recording everything for us because we have no idea how to do that. And I mean, it's great, and just like YouTube made putting your video out to, however many people wanted to watch it super easy, it sounds like that's what these guys are doing too. So if you have half a brain, you should get on the Tess app.
Half a one. You don't even need a whole one. You just need half of one. Get
on the Tess app because, I mean, there's a chance this thing could, be the next French toast. So it could blow up,
and maybe it won't. And we're certainly
there's a chance.
We're certainly open to acknowledging that. But at the end of the day, so much of life is about trial and error, and that's really what Eat the Fruit has been, a lot of trial and error. Because like Trev said, when we first started, we purchased some USB microphones off of Amazon. We had like a setup in our house, and it just became more and more difficult in order to produce content because we didn't have the equipment and we didn't have the expertise. Even though I would consider ourselves, problem solvers. And yet this was something that we were really struggling with. But it's also one of the reasons that brought us to WJCT. Yeah. And this has just been such a perfect setup. And we can't end this episode without giving a shout out to WJCT for letting us use their studios, and also our audio engineer, D. Even though he is not pictured, he's been behind the scenes making sure that everything has been running smoothly. And so we have to show a lot of love to him. But once again, one of the reasons why we won't be recording this podcast in the spring is because logistically it can be a little difficult. Another reason being Trevor leaving for the military and for boot camp. And then the third reason is Tess. It's like, let's not make things more difficult than they have to be. And if it is easier and simpler and more convenient to be able to record a podcast on my phone that is of the same quality as something that I would record in here, then it just makes sense. And that's what I've ultimately seen when it comes to tests, and that I'm sure Trev has seen as well, is tests just make sense. Just like Facebook makes sense. Just like Instagram makes sense. There's a reason why people use those platforms so much. It's because they're interesting. And like you heard Tony say, Tess is trying to make audio interesting. And if it's successful, the sky is the limit. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, they got a great name too. Tess.
Tess.
I wonder how they came up with that.
Yeah, that would have been a great question. We'll have to save that one for next time. In fact, Dan just texted me. I just got a text from old Dan the man, and he said, "Are you guys doing Eat the Fruit without me?" Dan, I apologize profusely. You look so just warm in your bed. It's been
like
cold.
An angel, like a big curly-haired angel, Dan.
And I just did not want to wake him. But it just goes to show how much Dan loves being here, how much we have loved being here this semester. This has been a really, really fun creative project.
Yeah.
And even though we have bigger and better things waiting for us in 2018, we did want to bring some closure to 2017. We wanted to bring some closure to Eat the Fruit, but we also wanted to look ahead to some of the new and exciting possibilities that are waiting for us just around the corner.
Yeah.
Trev, any last words, dude, before you ship off to boot camp and just head out into the world and save all of us from the Oompa Loompas that are trying to take over the United States? They're out there. They've got candy. They're all charged up on sugar, and they're storming the gates, dude.
Yeah. If I don't make it back, give a middle finger to the Oompa Loompas for me. But no, I just I've enjoyed every moment of making this podcast. Before we were recording in our house, that was a lot of fun, and now here in the studio, it's just been a great opportunity to talk to interesting people, to just listen to cool ideas, and it's great. I'm glad we have people that listen to us, and we just want to thank you for that. It'd be stupid if we were just talking and no one was listening. So you validate us, and we thank you.
It really is. It's all about you guys. It's about the listeners. We have really appreciated your support this year. It's been absolutely phenomenal. And one other individual that I do not want to leave out is Angie. Angie is the video editor and really kind of graphic artist for Eat the Fruit. We've been doing kind of a separate mini-series with her, which is called Behind the Scenes with Just Angie. I've been posting those videos on our YouTube channel. If you want to see how Angie created our intro, our outro, some of the different text bubbles and stuff during the interviews, she has video tutorials in a playlist, and I have all those published. And so make sure you check those out. But once again, Angie, you have been absolutely huge, whether it was with the Give Dubai a Try podcast and now Eat the Fruit. I really can't thank you enough. You have made Trevor and I's lives just a million times easier and have really allowed us to take what we're doing to the next level. And so if you guys know Angie, shoot her a message, give her a high five, give her a hug, because she has just been huge to what we're doing. And her work is just really, really awesome as well. Like I said, Behind the Scenes with Just Angie is on our channel as well, so check out that playlist. I can't give our normal outro. We can't give our normal outro because there will not be a next time, at least for Eat the Fruit. But either way, once again, we fucking love you guys.
We want to thank you.
We love you, and we want to thank you. And honestly, we're just gonna be moving on to the next adventure.
Yeah,
but
so glad you could be part of this journey with us.
Yes,
it's been interesting. And it's been fun.
We're getting so sentimental here.
Oh my gosh. I just want to thank my mom.
Get that man some oxygen. Get him a tissue.
Yeah. But we don't want to leave it on a down note. So awesome. Thank you guys for this. Thanks for listening. And I know we've all had a blast, and we hope you guys have too. From
Peace.
The Eat the Fruit team to the world.
Yep. And for Dan the man, who couldn't be with us.
And Spirit. Yeah.
Yes. We love you guys.
Peace.